is in charge.
So Israel doesn't have a view, is your answer?
Whoever is in charge and is willing to follow such a policy.
So to be clear, Israel does not have a preference between the rebels and Assad. It's whoever sticks to this description.
I think we have no preference. No.
Okay, you say no preference. There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is, of course, the al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded al-Qaeda-aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically
So it's purely humanitarian, you say. So there's no tactical or political strategic...
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be blowback.
Why?
Because I think that, unfortunately, the rules of the game in Syria are such that you can do anything that is not possible to be done anywhere else.
Yeah, I think people said that in Afghanistan too. Would you also treat Hezbollah fighters?
No. I would not treat...
Have you not just contradicted what you told me 60 seconds ago about humanely treating your enemies?
No. I think as far as Hezbollah fighters are concerned, with them we have a different account.
So let me be clear, you're happy to treat al-Qaeda fighters, but not Hezbollah fighters?
We have a different account with Hezbollah, a totally different account, because Hezbollah has carried out the type of actions against us which preclude us from going into what the al-Qaeda has done. Al-Qaeda, to the best of my recollection, has up to now not attacked Israel.
Many people would argue that the US actually saw the rise of ISIL coming and turned a blind eye, or even encouraged it as a counterpoint to Assad. And a secret analysis by the agency you ran, the Defense Intelligence Agency, in August 2012 said, and I quote, "There is the possibility of establishing a declared or undeclared Salafist," it's not secret anymore, it was released under FOI. The quote is, "There is the possibility of establishing a declared or undeclared Salafist principality in eastern Syria, and this is exactly what the supporting powers to the opposition want in order to isolate the Syrian regime." The US saw the ISIL caliphate coming and did nothing. In 2012, your agency was saying, quote, "The Salafists, the Muslim Brotherhood and al-Qaeda in Iraq are the major forces driving the insurgency in Syria." In 2012, the US was helping coordinate arms transfers to those same groups. Why did you not stop that if you're worried about the rise of quote-unquote Islamic extremism?
I mean, I hate to say it's not my job, but my job was to ensure that the accuracy of our intelligence that was being presented was as good as it could be. And I will tell you, it goes before 2012. I mean, when we were in Iraq, and we still had decisions to be made before there was a decision to pull out of Iraq in 2011. I mean, it was very clear what we were going to face.
Well, I admire your frankness on this subject.
What we were going to face.
Let me just, before we move on, just to clarify once more, you are basically saying that even in government at the time, you knew those groups were around, you saw this analysis, and you were arguing against it, but who wasn't listening?
I think the administration.
So the administration turned a blind eye to your analysis.
I don't know if they turned a blind eye. I think it was a decision. I think it was a willful decision.
A willful decision to go support an insurgency that had Salafists, Al-Qaeda, and
a
Muslim
willful
Brotherhood.
decision to do what they're doing, which you have to really ask the president, what is it that he actually is doing with the policy that is in place, because it is very, very confusing. I'm sitting here today, Mehdi, and I can't tell you exactly what that is, and I've been at this for a long time.
What my constant cry was that our biggest problem was our allies. Our allies in the region were our largest problem in Syria. The Turks were great friends, and I have a great relationship with Erdogan, which I've just spent a lot of time with. The Saudis, the Emiratis, etc. What were they doing? They were so determined to take down Assad and essentially have a proxy Sunni-Shia war, What did they do? They poured hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of tons of weapons into anyone who would fight against Assad, except that the people who were being supplied were al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and the extremist elements of jihadis coming from other parts of the world. Now you think
Coming back to the Syrian conflict, as you mentioned, barbaric crimes committed there, millions of people have left their homes, Bashar al-Assad has a lot to answer for. How do you, on the other side of that conflict, justify supporting what have been called quote-unquote jihadist groups fighting against Assad? You've supported the Army of Conquest, Jaish al-Fatah, which is an umbrella group of rebels that includes also Jabhat al-Nusra, which is, of course, al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria. Your critics say, see, Saudi Arabia is sponsoring, quote, violent extremism in Syria and elsewhere.
We do not support Jabhat al-Nusra. As far as we're concerned, we've declared Jabhat al-Nusra to be a terrorist organization long before anybody else did. The same thing applies to Daesh. So we do not support terrorist organizations.
No, I'm asking the question specifically about Jaish al-Fatah, which is an umbrella of rebel groups, which Saudi Arabia supports. Jabhat al-Nusra is a member of that group. So
we do not support Jabhat al-Nusra.
But you support a group that Jabhat al-Nusra is part of.
We support other groups.
Agreed. But you also support a group that Jabhat al-Nusra is part of.
We do not support Jabhat al-Nusra, period.
Do you support Jaish al-Fatah?
I don't know about Jaish al-Fatah.
The Army of Conquest.
We do not support any organization that is declared a terrorist organization by the United Nations.
You mentioned Daesh.
Saudi Arabia has been blamed over many, many, many years for funding and allowing extremism to flourish. Doesn't Saudi Arabia also bear so much of the brunt of the blame for the rise of ISIS and such groups?
When the Syrian civil war began, Saudi Arabia and many other Gulf countries and many other countries in the world also supported all those groups that were trying to topple the regime over there. And unfortunately, the result of that was the rise of ISIS.
Put aside the German minister and the US vice president, you say you have nothing to do with ISIL or Jabhat al-Nusra, but you have said you're working with Ahrar al-Sham. In fact, you've said Ahrar al-Sham are one of the honorable rebel groups in Syria, despite the fact that this is a hardline group which has rejected democracy, which shares its commanders with al-Qaeda in Syria, shares the same, quote, end goal as ISIL, a so-called Islamic State, and which has been accused of war crimes by Human Rights Watch, of gunning down children, of hostage-taking. You have no problems working with a group like that?
You are evaluating them as such? Or
that is
who's
what
evaluating
on their
them?
basis of what they've said.
Ahrar al-Sham is a Syrian liberated group, and they are among other Syrian army, among other Syrian
The
groups.
leader of Ahrar al-Sham told Al Jazeera that we share the same end goal as ISIL and Islamic State. We only disagree on tactics. That's the group you're supporting.
They have different ideology, Mahdi.
That's not what he's saying.
Ahrar al-Sham is a moderate group.
A moderate group whose founder, Abu Khalid al-Suri, declared publicly that he was the representative of Ayman al-Zawahiri, the al-Qaeda leader in Syria.
No, they have nothing to do with. I can guarantee you that they have no link.
But they're saying they have links.
No,
Foreign Minister, you're saying they don't have links.
No,
the leaders of Ahrar al-Sham are saying we have links.
I am telling you that Ahrar al-Sham is a Syrian group. They look for their liberation, and they are working amongst another moderate group. And
so when the leader of Ahrar al-Sham tells Al Jazeera, as he did in 2013, that democracy is governing people according to the rules they please, we don't agree with democracy, is he lying?
You cannot have democracy off the shelf and just ask the people to have your democracy. Their goal is to bring the regime down because of the brutality.
By killing women and children, according to Human Rights Watch, a report of October 2013, entire families were gunned down by rebel groups, including Ahrar al-Sham.
Rest assured, if Ahrar al-Sham committed such crimes as you are mentioning, then they will have a firm stand from the countries who consider them Syrian. I don't think Ahrar al-Sham committed any of these crimes.
Okay, well, you're here.
I'm not here to defend Ahrar al-Sham, by the way.
You are defending them.
No, not to defend them. I'm saying Ahrar al-Sham is among the other moderate groups who are struggling for their freedom. I have to be clear on this.
And there are a couple of subgroups underneath the two designated, Daesh and Jabhat al-Nusra, Jaish al-Islam, Ahrar al-Sham particularly, who brush off and fight with that alongside these other two sometimes to fight the Assad regime.
Are you considering designating Ahrar al-Sham and Jaish al-Islam as terrorist or groups, as the Russians asking for?
I know of no such consideration that's being considered. Again, Samir, we've talked about this.
I saw reports that Ahrar al-Sham refused to abide by the ceasefire.
I've seen those reports as well, but again, I'd go back to what I said before. We're in 2 points. We're, as you might expect, in constant contact with the moderate opposition. We understand that that certain of them have doubts, have concerns.
Is this specific group considered to be moderate opposition?
Again, I don't have the list of every group here, but Ahrar al-Sham is not designated as a terrorist organization inside Syria.